So I'm just going to do a little bit of a fun scene with candles today. What we want is we want to create a nice glow in the lights. We're going to make red candles. We're going to make a gold ball, I think. I was thinking also green could be done too, kind of a bluish green. And then we've got some nice holly, a little bit of a pine cone, and some other greenery here. So let's start with the background first. We need to create a little bit of a darker background to get that glow happening. And I'm going to start with a bit of, looking for my green gold, no, my Quin gold. So let's just find my Quin gold here. Okay, so let's start just putting in a bit of nice background in here. Want it lighter towards the candle because I'm going to have a bit of a red. So and I want a nice glow coming out here, so let's fill that up. Add some more. Let's bring in a bit of, let's try a bit of Gamboge here. Because we're going to get the heat of the flame, but then we also have some nice warm color around it. So I'm leaving a bit of white around. Bringing back my green gold, I'm sorry, my Quin gold back in here. And so some of that will tend to fall into the colors here. Let's try and add that a bit there. And definitely we're going to have a nice glow around that area. So let's just add a bit of a glow in here for now. And finish with a bit of glow around there and there. That's definitely going to be gold, so we could put a little bit of the Gamboge in here at the moment. And see what we come up with. Sometimes there's silver too, so why don't we just fill that up here and then decide how we want to do it. Okay, now that we've filled in all those areas, I'm going to come in with a bit of a shadow violet here and start darkening some of that. And then adding a bit of burnt orange, rustic wood, warm wood environment, more shadow violet. I think we need a bit of other darker color. I think a purple. Let's try this. Now that may be a little too brown for the fact that we're going to be using the red, so I think I'm going to bring in some red and see what that does. Okay, let's do that. So this is a Quinacridone Red, which I'm going to pop in over here too. And then some of that shadow violet down here as well. Okay, so now that I've started with that red, let's try and bring some of that red. Actually, we'll use that nicely for the candles. Now they're going to be quite liquid around that area, and usually where the liquid starts to come down tends to be white, so let's just pull that in there. And just continue with the berries. We'll make the berries a little bit more orangey in a bit. Let's add a bit more of that Quin gold into there. Maybe a little new Gamboge as well. Okay, I'm just going to mix a bit of the two together to get that bit of orangey, beautiful orange in there. Could even put a little bit of that orange in the center of the flame. Come back more to the red. We'll need some shadows, but we gotta let that dry a bit. So let's just put some color into the berries. Don't have any more berries anywhere else, so we could pop in a little bit of color back here just to make it look a little looser. And we do have that pine cone, which we could definitely use the burnt orange on. Start with that there. Could pop in a bit more of that burnt orange color around here to make it look like there was maybe more pine cones around the back there. Okay, so let's bring in a bit of cool yellow right into our flame. Okay, so now we need our greens, and I have all sorts of greens that are pre-made that we can use, and I'm thinking to try my Pyrolene Green here. Or I could use the green gold. That's not green gold, that's something else, that's Aurelian. If I bring the Aurelian, see how the difference, and the Aurelian has a bit of a green tone to it. Could put in a little bit of that for the cedar. And now my Windsor green, I have my Pyrol green is a bit dark. You're going to see that's quite dark. And it is about the right color for the holly, depending on what part is shining, where there's light kind of coming into it. Because it's a little cooler in parts where you might want to use more of a coolish green like that, but that's a bit too cool. So let's mix it up a bit. Some holly has little white pits at the end. Depends how wild your holly is. I know that the holly we used to grow was quite dark. Okay, so let's do that over here. And we have some up here. Okay, and we have this over here. Now that's got a bit yellow, so I'm just going to take a little bit more of what I've got here is phthalo green. Just going to pop a little bit of that into here. Now our evergreens are more on the phthalo green side, but not quite. It's a little bit more bluish, so I've just added a little bit of phthalo blue to it too, to try and get some of that feeling of coolness. You could even do like an eucalyptus color, which would be more on the turquoisey green side. I'm trying to leave some white in between so that it looks a little bit more. And then we'll add some shadows in a bit afterwards. And I think there's just a little bit back here. Okay, so the only thing we need to start really doing now is working on the shadows a little bit. Working on making sure our flame looks good, and we've got to get our little Christmas ball happening here. Now that I've seen where our colors and our darks are, we may have way too much already of the greens and the dark reds. So maybe we need to stay to our new Gamboge color to kind of make it look more golden-y like. So we'll stick to that. There would be some reflection off whatever table setting might be there. I don't know, we didn't really determine what it's sitting on, if it was a red tablecloth or something that it's sitting on. Let's add a little bit of red into that too. It might even be some kind of plaid or something. Just don't know. Could add a little bit of green to that to kind of make it look more Scottish, tartany. Okay. So we will have definitely the shadows. Usually the shadows, you can do a glaze on there to get a little bit more shadow just from that part. Then it's adding in a darker color like a purple, or going right to a gray. The gray tends to sap all the color out. Now here, let's work on this a bit first. So we can go to a yellow ochre and try and get a little bit more of that by using a bit of a more neutral color in there. And try and add that to the edge of the Christmas ball. Give it a bit of darkness. Now we could use a neutral tint too. Let me see if I have a neutral tint handy. Because the idea is you're going to get a bit of it's not coming off. See now how that's got to be careful there, because see how that's creeping out, and it could end up going green too. Although that's not a bad thing, because we do need to have some shadow from around the holly happening. But I need to get the right color for it. I also see that there's some white there that I want to make into a green. And pull out those holly a bit more. Okay, so let's see what we're going to do here. I think I'm going to let that dry. And I'm going to come back to my lamps, my candles. So we definitely have, let's see, this is in front. So it's going to have some shadow down at the base because there's some of that happening. So I'm not getting a lot there, so I'm going to go with a brown matter here, just trying to get in a bit of dark. And I would definitely put more dark here, as there's a bit of a shadow behind here. And I'm going to put there too. And some more dark at the base. And because it's a glaze, I need to try and soften it up a bit. Every time I do this, I'm pushing the color off, so I've got to be careful that I don't lose the color that I already have there. Now you could go with a separate brush and just with a little bit of water. I'm just not sure how dry it is underneath, and you can just soften it up with that. Now, usually right in the center is quite dark too. Where the wick is coming up. Okay. And with the brightness of the light, usually it's darker around the other edges. Now, I notice here it's way too wet. I can't do anything with that. This is still quite wet too. So let's go back to our holly and see if I can't fix that up a bit more. Again, I'm just using the Pyrolene Green. Try to leave a little bit in the center, darker as we come out to the edge here where it's further away. Let's put in a little around the holly too, and definitely around that holly leaf. Some holly has a little bit of white around it, but I don't have that. Focusing on that here. Now I could also, with the pine cone, add a bit of the darks with that green in the center, where there would be some shadows in between the different layers. And I could definitely make that darker too. Let's come over to these other. Let's keep that nice and dark against the yellow and hope it doesn't run in. Now one of the things I could use is my iridescent gold, which I happen to have in one of my trays here. There it is. Let's add some more color, dark in here. Got some darks in between there. We could cool that down a bit with more of that phthalo green. Add a little bit of dark right in there. Okay. So now let me find my iridescent gold here. So I will come back in here, but this is a bit damp. This is still really damp right there, so I'm not going to do that. So we have some nice darks. We could use maybe a little darker in this area, but what I want to do is work on this iridescent gold that I've got. It's a watercolor. And so if I was to put it over my bulb here, you're going to get a bit of a shine on it, which is kind of cool. And so depending on the way it dries, you'll actually get a bit of sparkle. And I could use that a little bit up in my light. Just trying not to get it too overly saturated. Okay, so we'll have to leave that and see how that turns out now. Okay, so I'm going to try and darken this because right now all you see is my lines of where I've actually drawn this. I have some nice, but I need some darks back here, some nice lights here, but I also should have a bit of a shadow, shouldn't I? So let's see if I use a purple, will I get some of that shadow that I need, or will it just kind of be overpowering? Color is tending to run out from the gold. This is Dioxazine Purple. try and get some of that in there to get some shadows going. Could be a bit darker too. Let's try and bring it into the pine cone down here. And let's see if we can use it for the bit of darkness around the lamp. And even in the holly. Well, that just kind of, that's quite interesting actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and feather it out to make it look kind of like the branch of the evergreen. Shadowing there. Got to be careful because I'm seeing little glitter coming into my paint, which will not help later on when I'm doing another project. So let's try and see if we can get a bit of a shadow over here too, and here. It's possible that you might see some reflection off the lamps, just that's pretty hard. Let's get that a bit darker. Okay, there we go. I don't think we could darken this area a bit more if I added in some of that purple. We had the shadow purple before. I could, shadow violet rather, I could add a little bit more of that even. That tends to dissipate quite a bit. I could darken it a bit more here. Soften this up a bit. Now, sometimes you get a little bit of a glow in the different places. We could lift a little bit, or we could just go in and add a little bit of gouache, which would be easier than having to try and redo everything. Or lift it. Uh-oh, my brush is all dirty. Oh, that's the acrylic gouache. I don't think that's going to lift. Let's try that. This is actually the titanium white. And you could add just a bit in here to try and bring in a little bit of light reflecting. Try and get a bit more of that center of the holly. You could also do a little bit of masking fluid ahead of time, which would allow you to keep some more of those whites in there. Where else? I'm just going to go with just a little darker purple as a complement here right on the edge of the, and hope that it will actually outline this a bit more. Just remember to be careful with those sparkly things because they will tend to invade all your other paint. And there's your Christmassy scene. Thanks for watching.